The enemy's scream pierced the air, an alien shriek like metal scraping against bone, and I felt the recoil of my radium carbine slam back into my augmetic shoulder. My optics recalibrated instantly, tracking the biomass ahead through the swirling toxic haze. The Tyranid brood was close, too close. Their clawed shadows moved in the mist, each one a threat. I adjusted my stance and fired again. Delta 412, suppress the western flank, came Primus Helix's clipped order through the vox. His voice had the cadence of a servitor, devoid of emotion. Immediate compliance. Non-compliance will result in recalibration. Acknowledged, I replied, though there was no time for formalities. The carbine hummed in my grip, and I discharged another burst into the advancing swarm. A termagant's head split apart under the radioactive payload, spraying ichor across the jagged ferrocrete. 412, snapped Merrick Theta 9, my alpha. His phosphor serpenter flared as it lit up the fog. Move now or you'll overload the flank. On it, I growled and pushed forward, my mechadendrite unfurling from my back like a serpent, clawed and ready. Around me, the rest of cohort Risa Theta 41 advanced in perfect coordination, their movements synchronized through our data feed. We were extensions of the Primus's will, nothing more. Each step, each shot calculated for maximum efficiency. We were the breath of Mars, the Omnissiah's chosen, a tide of flesh and steel to crush the alien. But even in the cacophony of battle, I felt something deep in my core, a spark of fear, suppressed but present. Fear was illogical, but it lingered in the hidden parts of my human remnants, a ghost in the machine. The battlefield stretched wide, a hellish landscape of cracked ferrocrete and industrial wreckage. Tyranids poured from hive tunnels, their claws scrabbling against metal, their bioprojectiles filling the air with hissing death. Cohort Risa Theta 41 was outnumbered 10-1, but numbers meant little to the Adeptus Mechanicus. Primus Helix stood at the heart of the formation, his augmented frame towering over the Skitarii under his command. His mechadendrites coiled and flexed as he directed the battle, his data feed linking to every unit. His voice, transmitted through neural uplinks, was the cohort's lifeline. Radial suppression active. Engage the Tyrant-class entity at Vector 314. His orders were precise, but the enemy was relentless. Swarms of termagants and hormagaunts surged forward, their claws and scything talons a blur of motion. Behind them came larger warriors, their exoskeletons gleaming in the phosphor light. At the western flank, Thrain Delta 412 moved with mechanical precision, his radium carbine discharging shot after shot. He was supported by Merrick Theta 9, whose phosphor serpenter scorched the darkness with streaks of searing light. Around them, the cohort's vanguard pressed forward, their radiation-laden weapons poisoning the air and the ground beneath the enemy's claws. I fired again, aiming for the termagants darting between wrecked pillars of industrial scrap. Each shot tore through alien flesh, but for every one I killed, 3 more replaced it. Delta 412, maintain suppression fire, Helix ordered, his voice cutting through the neural link. Suppressing, I replied, though the strain on my systems was mounting. My radium carbine whined as its charge spool overheated. A warning rune flashed across my optic HUD. Cooling was inefficient, but meltdown would leave me defenseless. Merrick voxed through the static. I'm moving for the relay node. Keep the swarm off me. Affirmative, I answered. He surged past me, his serpenter firing in controlled bursts. The relay node was critical, a device linking us to the Mechanicus's broader war network. Without it, we'd be fighting blind, cut off from Helix's calculations. The enemy sensed the importance of the node. A brood of hormagaunts broke from the swarm, rushing Merrick in a blur of claws and carapace. I stepped forward, intercepting them with my carbine and mechadendrite. My shot struck true, reducing 2 to bubbling masses of ichor, but 1 made it through. It lunged, claws outstretched. I twisted, letting it crash into my chest plating. My mechadendrite lashed out, grabbing its skull and crushing it with a sickening crack. I threw the corpse aside and turned back to Merrick. Hurry up, I voxed. They're converging on you. I don't need your commentary. 412, he shot back, though his focus never wavered. At the cohort's core, Primus Helix's optics flickered as he analysed the battle. The swarm was shifting, their movements indicating the approach of something larger. Tyrant-class bioform detected, he voxed to the entire cohort. Engage with priority. From the tunnel mouth, a Tyranid warrior emerged. Towering and monstrous, it carried a biocannon that pulsed with malevolent energy. Its talons, each as long as a man, gleamed with corrosive venom. The tyrant roared, the sound shaking the ferrocrete beneath the Skitari's iron boots. Delta 412, Helix's voice crackled through the link. You will engage the tyrant directly. Understood, I replied, though my internal system screamed with warnings. I advanced, my carbine humming as I overcharged its core. The tyrant turned toward me, its cannon firing. A blob of corrosive biomatter struck the ground at my feet, exploding in a shower of acid. I leapt aside, my servos groaning under the strain. The creature charged, its talons swiping in an arc meant to cleave me in two. I ducked, feeling the rush of displaced air as it missed by millimeters. Flank it! Merrick shouted through the link. I'll distract it. I adjusted my targeting vectors and fired into the tyrant's exposed flank. The radium burst struck true, eating away at its armor. The creature screamed, swinging a talon toward me. I raised my mechadendrite to block, but the impact severed it cleanly. Pain warnings flooded my HUD, but I suppressed them. I had to finish this. I aimed for its head and fired a final overcharged burst. The radium beam punched through its skull, and the tyrant collapsed in a heap of ichor and bone. The battlefield grew quiet as the swarm receded, their morale broken with the death of the tyrant. Helix surveyed the carnage, his optics whirring as he processed the aftermath. Mission success, he voxed. Regroup and prepare for further engagement. I stared at the shattered remains of my mechadendrite, sparks and fluid leaking from the severed joint. Functional, operational, but hollow. Merrick approached, his serpentor still steaming. Still alive, 412? For now, I muttered. No rest for the breath of Mars? He nodded, impassive. Rest is irrelevant. Efficiency is not. And we marched forward once more.